Hi everyone and welcome back. Today I'm going to drop a review that I've been cooking for over a year. As you already know, I do not like to rush things. I do not like rushed hi-fi reviews that don't tell you everything that you need to know about a particular unit, and that's why proper hi-fi reviews might take you a few weeks, maybe months, maybe even a year to perfect. Today I'm going to check out an overkill headphone amplifier literally, and also an equally impressive stereo integrated amplifier called Cayin Soul 170HA that costs 8,000 euros here locally and also 7,500 US dollars across the pond. But before we begin, I have something to disclose with you guys. This is not a review sample, this is not a loaned unit. This is a unit that I purchased with my own money immediately after returning home last year from the Munich high-end show and awarding it with our Best of Show award. So grab yourself a snack and a drink and let's go ahead with this video. First of all, when you buy the 170HA, you get two boxes, one for the power supply and one for the amplifier. And after unboxing the units and putting them together, they weigh a little over 40 kilos or almost 90 pounds. And that is the sole reason you cannot see them on this table, because this table probably cannot support 40 kilos. But don't worry, I'll include them in a ton of B-roll footage. This combo is incredibly heavy, and if you're using it as a headphone amplifier, it will occupy lots of desktop space, especially if you use them separately, power supply and headphone amplifier near each other. However, to save desktop space, you can stack them together for a neat looking stack. And I'm happy to report that after stacking, the temperatures didn't go up as expected, nor did I get transformer hum, so you can safely put them on top of each other. I'm also obliged to say that these are built to the highest build quality standards, and I'm not joking. So the front panel is made out of milled aerospace aluminum with matte black anodized finish, while the side panels are made out of black walnut wood that was hand polished, giving the amp a unique look. Both units use wide metallic feet with rubber inlays that should remove micro vibrations. And I also like that the volume wheel is lit, so you can see it even during late night listening sessions. And please don't get me started with that analog VU meter sitting on top. I'm a sucker for VU meters, and this one is as majestic as the rest of them. Overall, the build quality is pretty much unmatched. I'm not exaggerating a single bit. I like everything about it. How it looks, how it feels, how strong it is, how solid it is. And there's one thing I forgot to mention. We also get this metallic remote control with just 3 buttons that lets you control the volume or mute the volume entirely. So this is also very nicely built, and this is everything that you need to know about its build quality and looks. The amazing part is that I'm not just describing an overkill headphone amplifier, but an equally impressive stereo integrated amplifier. In terms of controls, on this front panel we have a 4-pin XLR and also a 4.4mm balanced connections, and we also have a regular 1/4-inch headphone jack. We have a headphone selector switch nearby and an impedance switch as well. Move the switch to low impedance for headphones with an impedance of up to 64 ohms, medium impedance up to 250 ohms, and everything above that should be used in high impedance mode. On its back we have a pair of XLR and RCA analog inputs, 2 pairs of speaker outputs for your left and right loudspeakers, and then a beefy looking power connections that link the power supply to the main unit using 2 heavy-duty umbilical cords made out of high-purity silver-plated copper wire. There is an 8-pin high-voltage cable and then a 12-pin low-voltage cable, so don't worry about using the wrong cable, as that is not going to happen. Okay everyone, now let's talk about the internal components. But first of all, you should know that this is a transformer coupled single-ended triode amplifier that was built with point-to-point wiring for the shortest signal path. Secondly, this is a pure Class A amplifier, so we get a constant heat dissipation. It never moves to AB, so this is a very important part. Regardless of what mode you are choosing, regardless of the volume, it always stays in Class A operation. Thirdly, this is the most powerful headphone amplifier that passed through these hands, and believe me, I tried a lot of headphone amplifiers. Delivering up to 18 watts in ultralinear mode, there isn't a headphone available on the market right now that it won't drive with lots of headroom remaining on top, at least 50% headroom with anything that I have at my disposal. So it will drive them easily and you'll have plenty of power still remaining on top, and that is actually quite important. It also delivers 15 watts in triode mode. It changes a little bit its tonality, but more about that in a minute. And it also delivers 2 or 4 watts via that 4.4mm balanced output, made mostly for ultra-sensitive loads such as IMs and sensitive desktop headphones like Focals or Grado. While this is a power overwhelming headphone amplifier delivering 18 watts per channel, I cannot say the same thing when working as a stereo integrated amplifier, because it provides exactly the same power of 18 watts in ultralinear mode and 10 watts, I believe, in triode mode. So if you have loudspeakers that have a sensitivity of 92 dB or higher, it will work just outstanding. It might work okay with 90 dB sensitivity as well, but lower than that, you'll be close to max power or close to maximum volume. So maybe it's not the best choice for hard to drive loudspeakers like I have. Last but not least, you should know that this is the only headphone amplifier on the market that uses the most powerful power tetrode on the market, the Tungsol KT170. So a pair dissipates around 170 watts, so clearly this is the most powerful tetrode ever created, hence the name KT170. The only downside I see with this KT170 is that only Tungsol makes them, and I would like to try a more boutique version of this famous tube, but that is not possible right now. Besides this, we have a pair of J&J Electronic 6SN7 driver tubes, and yes, you can swap them with better ones if you wish, and also a pair of rectifiers, and those are J&J Electronic GZ34S that convert the AC to DC voltage, which you can swap with better ones as well if you wish, and more about that in a minute. Okay everyone, this is all you need to know about this one, so let's try it with a wall of headphones, with a couple of IMs, and with the loudspeakers that you can see behind me. If you intend on getting the Cayin Soul 170HA, then please, for the love of Odin, do not judge it in the first 100 hours of use. And yes, I totally understand, maybe you do not believe in burn-in, and those small amplifiers, they make little to no difference with or without burn-in, but I'm discussing a beastly amplifier that weighs almost 41 kilos or 90 pounds. And don't forget that those vacuum tubes also need running and cooling times to strengthen those cathode and anode elements. And there's a world of difference between a brand new Cayin and one that has 50 to around 100 hours, and let's talk about that. I was expecting some weak dynamics and a mediocre bass lamp, and that's what I got with the Cayin in the first hour of use, and also the treble was harsher than usual. However, there was something much stronger that bothered me a lot, and that was the noise floor, the noise output. It was noisy even with a pair of Hyphaman Susvara OG, Hyphaman Susvara Unveiled, T+A Solitaire P, even Sennheiser HD 800S were noisy on all of those three headphone outputs, something that I never experienced in 15 years of trying different headphone amplifiers. But I knew that it needs lots of running time to improve, and that's exactly what I've got after around 100, maybe 120 hours of use. I didn't count how many hours passed, but every hour I felt that the noise floor was going lower, lower and lower, and I could hear more music. Dynamics were becoming more alive, the treble less bothering, and after around 100 hours, maybe 120, I heard a very different version of the Cayin Soul 170HA. The sound got more refined and easier on the ear. Dynamics were now much punchier, especially the bass was much more playful, and let's talk about that in detail. You already know my insatiable desire for crazy dynamics. I believe that the very first requirement is having a lifelike tonality, probably for you as well, but my second requirement is having strong, punchy dynamics that makes the music not only technical and clean, but also fun and engaging. Personally, I do not enjoy weak, mellow, polite, or overly smooth sounding amplifiers. I believe that such amplifiers have no place in high-end audio applications. Strong dynamics are all about having a huge contrast and huge voltage swings that show you a massive difference in between low intensity sounds and also high intensity sounds. And if you don't feel your chest pounding on modern tunes via loudspeakers or your ears flapping to the music via headphones, then probably it's best to move to another amplifier that makes your music fun and engaging. If I look back at every headphone amplifier that I have tested around here, from super affordable to mid-level to high-end to select kidney type of amplifiers, then without a hint of exaggeration, the Cayin Soul 170HA is the most dynamic, punchy and engaging sounding amplifier that I've heard via headphones, and that says a lot. The bass lamp in particular is something that you need to hear and to experience first, especially with better driver tubes and with better rectifiers. Its dynamic range and its headroom is almost infinite. And I know I maybe mentioned sometimes in other reviews that we have a lot of headroom on that amplifier, on this amplifier, but this time around, this is the biggest headroom that I've got on any amplifier. I can barely arrive at 12 o'clock position, and it responds very, very well to a higher voltage intake coming from your DAC. So if you have 7 volts, 7.5 volts like I have on my Rockna, then it works absolutely amazing and you get lots of headroom remaining, even with something like Haifa-Mansour-Svara OG or Modhouse Tungstens. If I were to describe its dynamics in just a few words, then that would be explosive, kick-ass and also fun. I believe that Feliks Envy Performance Edition is very close to it, and Trophomatic Primavera as well, but the Cayin simply pounds harder with every bass kick and with every snare drum hit. The energy is never depleting on this one, and it's the one that made the Haifa-Mansour-Svara OG bass heavy on the right music and with the right selection of tubes. Instead of just letting you know that I tried plenty of vacuum tubes, driver tubes and rectifiers, but never show them on camera, I decided to discuss every driver tube and rectifier that I tried that will seriously improve, I believe, the sound and also many other things of this Cayin Soul 170HA. And let's start with the stock tubes. These are the JJ Electronic 6S and 7. These do not cost as much. I like that their sound is quite tight, but I don't like that they have an almost hazy presentation. And also they do not sound that wide, and the soundstage is not particularly impressive with the stock tubes. Now, if you have a substantial improvement that won't cost you an arm and a leg, those will be the Ray tubes 6S and 7 Select. So this will be even tighter sounding and resolution goes up by at least, I'd say, 10%. You can clearly hear simply a little bit more music and more nuances with these tubes. Another upgrade to this one will be the PS Vane CV181T2. These again add a little bit more resolution compared to 6S and 7 Select by Ray tubes. The tightness is improving, and also there's a bit more air in between the notes, so the soundstage is also somehow a little bit wider. Now, if you want the best tubes, new production vacuum tubes, then those will be either the Ray Tubes 6S and 7 Reserve or the PS Vane Summit Series 6S and 7. I believe these two play pretty much on the same level. I believe that the highest resolution you can get will be from these 6S and 7 Select, Reserve, or PS Vane Summit Series that provide you an improvement in resolution of at least 20%. Also, the air, the tightness, the bass are all improving. The bass becomes clearer, almost solid state in nature. So if you want that tight, fast, impactful bass, that's what you are getting with the Ray Tubes Reserve and also with the PS Vane Summit Series. Speaking of new old stock tubes, I believe that the cheapest upgrade that you can get right now would be the Raytheon 6S and 7. You can get them short boy or tall boy. They sound quite similar. They will be providing you a little bit more mid-range presence and a tighter bass, and also the resolution is not going down at all compared to the stock JJ. I'd say that it's going up just a little bit. This is a very cheap upgrade and I believe it's worth every single penny. For the most natural mid-range edition, I do recommend getting a pair of Sylvania VT231. These are simply something else in terms of mid-range delivery compared to any other tube that I have on hand. The vocals, string-based instruments, the texture is simply on another level with this tube. And I also like that they provide me pretty much one of the biggest sound stages that I've heard on the Cayin Soul 170HA. Absolutely outstanding, and resolution again is higher compared to the stock tubes. Almost on the same level with the PS Vanes and with the Ray Tubes Reserve. Not exactly at the same level, but very clean sounding, which is actually amazing because these were made in the World War II. And lastly, if you need the strongest kick in the bass, the most energetic bass delivery, and pretty much the most impressive dynamics, those would be coming from this Kenrad Black Glass VT231 or 6SN7 GT. It's the same tube. Crazy. This is the craziest tube I have in terms of bass delivery. Many say it's on the same level with the Melts. I don't really know. I never tried the Melts. I cannot buy them over eBay. I cannot find them anywhere. But this is very impressive and this is a very good substitute for the Melts. I like them with modern tunes, with electronica, with rock, absolutely hard pounding, with everything that has to do with bass and dynamics. Moving on to rectifier tubes, I believe that the stock JJ GZ34S are decent, only if you never tried a higher quality rectifier like this Sylvania 5931. This is a high quality rectifier, it's built to very high standards. It will probably outlive me, and this is also the most natural sounding rectifier that I have. It's a little bit smoother, it's a little bit sweeter sounding in the mid-range as well, and also the noise floor goes a little lower with this compared to the stock ones. So if you want a darker background and you want to hear some additional nuances, then this is a very easy recommendation. And lastly, if you need the most transparent, the cleanest, the most technical sound with the lowest noise floor, then that would be with the KR Audio 5U 4G rectifiers. These are quite expensive, but the improvement is substantial to say the least. These had the biggest impact to the sound compared to any other rectifier and driver tube that I tried on this one. It's like hearing a much more technical Cayin Soul, and yes, I do recommend these. These are expensive, but well worth the money. Now let's talk about its resolution, because this is quite an important aspect. If you use the stock vacuum tubes, then I'd say that its resolution is slightly higher compared to an X-Duo or Little Dot amplifier, but only when you start juggling with much higher quality driver tubes, but especially rectifiers, I can say that resolution can go up to like 25, maybe 30% improvement versus the stock tubes. And this is quite a big change, mind you. So only with the best tubes installed I can compare its resolution with something like the Feliks Envy Performance Edition, Triode Primavera. It's not exactly on the same level with the Feliks Envy Susvara Edition with those amorphous core transformers and silver wiring, but it definitely fights for the second or third place in terms of how clean and resolving it can get. And that should tell you a lot how I feel about this one. And yes, with these better tubes you can compare it with some of the cleanest sounding solid-state amplifiers as well. Now let's discuss its noise floor with ultra-sensitive louds like IAMs. Personally, I do not use overkill headphone amplifiers with IAMs, but if you do, let's discuss about that. I've used the 4.4mm jack, which is no longer blasting 18 watts per channel, but 4 watts in ultralinear mode and 3 watts in triode mode. So that's what I used, the 4.4 jack. And I could hear a barely audible noise when connecting and disconnecting these IAMs. It was more like a barely audible hum, more like a white noise, but I cannot hear it anymore when the music starts playing. It's there, but I cannot focus on this one. So I'd say it's not exactly as dead silent like the Triode Primavera or the Feliks Envy Susvara Edition, but I'd say it's okay considering the price difference. It works decent with IAMs, but it's not the best choice. However, with desktop headphones of any kind, with dynamic headphones, it was completely noiseless, so that's okay, that's good. That's all you need to know. It's almost pointless discussing its power output because this is simply the most powerful headphone amplifier that passed through my hands, and it's the one that I felt that I have simply unlimited headroom and unlimited power. And if you feed it a higher voltage signal coming from your DAC, something like 7.5 volts or along those lines, then the headroom remaining on top will be even higher. So the maximum I could reach with the Susvara OG, which are the hardest to drive headphones that I have in my collection, was 12 o'clock position, and mind you, that was already very, very loud. Most of my friends do not listen at 12 o'clock, more like at 10 o'clock position, so leaving even more headroom on top. There isn't a headphone, I believe, on this planet that the Cayin Soul won't drive, except for electrostatics, of course, but everything else is working just outstanding. It's always toying around with them as if no load is attached to it, and as you can expect, dynamics are again limitless, sounding hard, slamming and punchy with modern tracks. So if you need a power overwhelming amplifier that will drive every headphone in your collection, then this is again quite an easy recommendation to make. I do not know any other amplifier that provides as much power and that sounds as impressive like the Cayin in terms of dynamics and power reserve. I also used it with my Radio TD 2.2 loudspeakers that you can see behind me that have a sensitivity of around 86 dB, but more like 85 dB if you measure them. So these are very hard to drive and control. And that's precisely why I'm using two monoblock amplifiers that output up to 1000 watts per channel in 4 ohms or 500 watts per channel in 8 ohms. Only with those I could control them and hear this amazing bass delivery. Now I will be 100% transparent with you guys. I was unable to have an amazing grip and control of the drivers with the Cayin Soul because there is not so much power on top, and these speakers demand a little bit more power to sound snappy, lightning fast and super grippy with modern tracks, something that I couldn't hear with the Cayin. This is not the problem of the Cayin, but mostly of these loudspeakers that simply need more juice to be fully driven and controlled. However, I would say that the tone and timbre of the Cayin was simply outstanding, not only in triode mode, but also in ultralinear mode. I was surprised that even if I was reaching, the upper power limits, like sitting at 3 o'clock position, so 75% power-wise in ultralinear mode, and almost max power in triode mode, I was surprised that the bass was not losing definition, punch, slam. It was losing just a little bit of speed and control, but the punch and the slam was still quite impressive on the Cayin. However, it was in no way limiting the engagement factor or the bass output. It was still quite punchy and quite fun sounding. And even if I was pushing it to its absolute limits power-wise, I was surprised by how well it handled my speakers. And also I was surprised that the noise floor was not going up and I couldn't hear those tweeters buzzing. It was dead silent and it was pure pleasure listening to it. Moving on to triode mode, I felt that the volume went down a little bit and I needed to add a few clicks to have a very similar sound pressure level with that UltraLinear mode. But this time around it was not about getting some punchy dynamics or strong kicks in the bass, but about getting a very different presentation. It was smoother, gentler, there was a little bit more texture all around the notes, and it was a little bit organic sounding, I'd say, to a point of calling it romantic with the right set of tubes. Considering that we have the UltraLinear mode and then triode mode, then we have dynamic and soft modes, we have 4 different sound profiles that we can enjoy on the Cayin Soul 170HA. The difference between UltraLinear and triode mode is very obvious, you can hear it right away. UltraLinear is a bit more powerful, it's snappier, it's faster, the contour of the notes is a little bit sharper, and I'd say it sounds a little bit closer to a solid-state amplifier with these technicalities. Flipping the switch to triode mode, it gets a little bit slower, smoother, softer, gentler, and you have a bit more time to appreciate the music as we have longer decays of the musical notes, so it definitely sounds a bit more romantic in this mode. The difference between dynamic and soft is not so immediate, but you'll definitely appreciate a bit more dynamic energy and drive in the dynamic mode and a bit softer and mellower, like I'd say even ethereal sound in the soft mode. However, you can mix and match how you please. You can go with UltraLinear and dynamic for the strongest kick in the bass, for the most technical sound, or you can go with a very different sound profile, choosing triode mode and soft dynamic, so everything will be calmer, softer, more relaxed, gentler, and it's quite addictive just flipping a switch and getting a different sound profile. I know many of you would like me to compare the Cayin Soul with the Feliks Envy Standard or Performance Edition, but you should know that I upgraded my Performance Edition to Susvara Edition, so these are no longer in the same price bracket. However, I did compare the Feliks Envy Performance Edition with the Cayin many times by now, alone and also in the company of a few headfires, and I clearly remember I even left a few notes on my PC, so I know exactly how they sound. The first and the most immediate difference will be the power output. On the Cayin, everything feels simply limitless when you are driving headphones. There is simply a lot of power and you can feel that dynamics are just roaring wild. Something that I cannot say the same thing on the Feliks Envy Standard or Performance Edition. It doesn't mean the Feliks Envy Standard or Performance Edition doesn't sound great with the Susvara OG. That will be a lie. It sounds outstanding with the Susvara OG, but it's not squeezing the last drop of dynamics and bass sustain, bass punch with these headphones, and this is where the Cayin Soul is simply shining. It's stronger, there's more headroom, and if you need just lots of power with lots of control and drive, then the Cayin is simply better. The second difference that might be more important to some of you is their tonal balance. You see, the Feliks Envy Standard or Performance Edition or even Susvara Edition uses directly heated 300B triodes that offer you one of the most organic, lush, sweet sounding sound that you can get from any amplifier out there. The Cayin Soul uses indirectly heated power tetrodes, the KT170, and those are much more powerful, so there is more power on top, there's more grip, there's a better control over the drivers, stronger dynamics in the bass, at the cost of not being as lush, as organic and as lifelike sounding like the Feliks Envy Standard or Performance or Susvara editions. You can of course partially mitigate this issue on the Cayin and use some new old stock tubes. like the Sylvanias, for example, for rectifiers and driver tubes, and it will be a little bit closer sounding in terms of tonal balance with the Feliks Envy, but it will never be exactly on the same level with lushness and meat on the bone and texture and sweetness, so on and so forth. And that is the sole reason why I've been using both the Cayin Soul and the Feliks Envy for almost a year now. When I want to rock hard, then I would use the Cayin, and when I want to relax and go with the flow, then I would use the Envy. Wrapping up, I think that Cayin made a formidable sounding headphone amplifier and integrated amplifier. To be frank with you, I expected it to cost a little bit more, and that's why I bought it right away. I felt that the price might go up. That wasn't really the case, but I feel that even at this price, it's worth every single penny. It sounds outstanding, and with the right set of tubes, it will play at a very similar level with top-of-the-line headphone amplifiers and even integrated amplifiers. I was surprised that it was driving my Radio TD 2.2 loudspeakers, not only in UltraLinear mode, but also in Triode mode. And it was never limiting dynamics, the bass output when doing so, so that was actually quite a pleasant surprise. The only thing I desired was a nicer control of the drivers, sounding slower and not that tight. However, if your loudspeakers have a sensitivity of 90 dB or higher, then I presume it will fully drive your speakers, offer a much higher headroom, and sound much closer to what I have experienced via headphones. And considering all of the above, I believe that it fully deserved my highly impressive award. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. Please smash that like button and consider subscribing if you found this video helpful. And I'll see you next week with quite a special sounding pair of headphones, handcrafted in Italy. See you soon. Cheers!